I'm Ethan, 63 male. I've spent the last 40 years designing the skylines of major cities, building structures meant to withstand earthquakes, hurricanes, and the ravages of time. I live in a glass-walled sanctuary I designed myself, overlooking the city lights, with my wife of 30 years, Sarah. Or at least, I thought I was living with my wife. It turns out, I was living with a stranger who was systematically dismantling the foundation of my life while I was busy admiring the view. They say you never really know what's happening behind closed doors, even if you're the one who hung the doors. I was about to retire, to hand over my legacy to the young man I treated like a son and spend my golden years traveling with the woman I adored. But one dinner, one stranger, and one small blue box changed everything. The demolition of my life didn't happen with a wrecking ball, it happened with a whisper. Narrator Break. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. A quiet dinner and a blue box. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in high-end restaurants on a Tuesday night. It isn't an empty silence, it's a hum. The clinking of heavy silverware against bone china, the soft murmur of deal making at the corner tables, the rustle of stiff napkins, and the ambient jazz that seems to float from nowhere and everywhere all at once. For me, this was the sound of success. It was the sound of the world I had built for myself. I was sitting at table 4 at Le Méridien, my favorite spot in the city. It was a place where the waiters knew not just my name, but the precise temperature I liked my Pinot Noir. I was 63 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, and I was alone. That wasn't unusual these days, but tonight the solitude felt heavier than usual. Sarah, my wife of 30 years, is supposed to be across from me. We had reservations to celebrate the final approval of the Helix Tower, the last major skyscraper I would design before my retirement. It was my magnum opus, a twisting glass structure that defied conventional gravity, much like my career had defied the odds. But at 5:00 p.m., the text had come in. So sorry, honey. Mom's taken a turn. Her breathing is shallow. I need to drive up to the care home and stay the night. Please have a steak for me. Love you. I didn't begrudge her. Her mother was 88 and frail. I had simply texted back, go. Take care of her. I'll see you tomorrow. So there I was, nursing a glass of red wine, looking out the window at the city I helped build, feeling a strange mix of pride and obsolescence. The reflection in the glass showed a man who had aged well, I like to think. My hair was silver, yes, but thick. My shoulders were still broad, though I felt the ache of arthritis on rainy days. I was the founder of Vanguard Architecture, a firm that was the envy of the East Coast. In 2 weeks, at my retirement gala, I would officially hand the keys of the kingdom over to Mark. Mark, the boy. Well, he was 42 now, but he would always be a boy to me, had come to me fresh out of grad school, hungry and brilliant. I saw myself in him. I had no children, Sarah, and I had tried, but it wasn't in the cards. Mark became the son I never had. I taught him everything. How to see the lines that weren't there, how to charm a client, how to navigate the brutal politics of city planning. Handing the firm to him felt right. It felt safe. I took a sip of wine, savoring the oaky finish. The waiter placed a basket of warm bread on the table. Mr. Vance, he said softly, the chef is preparing the ribeye exactly as you like it. Thank you, David. I nodded. I pulled out my phone to check my emails, a bad habit I swore I'd break once I retired. There was an email from Mark, finalizing the structural specs for the Helix tonight. Don't worry about the gala, I've got the team handling the logistics. You just show up and look legendary. I smiled. The kid was a workaholic. I started to type a reply, telling him to go home and get some sleep, when a shadow fell over my table. I looked up, expecting the sommelier. Instead, a woman stood there. She was striking, though not in the way Sarah was. Sarah was soft edges, warmth, and floral perfume. This woman was sharp angles and monochrome. She wore a tailored black coat, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked to be in her mid-40s with eyes that were intelligent, wary, and incredibly direct. She didn't look like a diner. She looked like someone who had walked in off the street with a singular purpose. Ethan Vance, she asked. Her voice was low, raspy, like she smoked too much or didn't sleep enough. Yes. I put my phone down, instinctively straightening my posture. Do we know each other? She didn't answer. She didn't smile. She didn't offer a handshake. Instead, she reached into her deep coat pocket and pulled out a small box. It was blue, about the size of a jewelry box, wrapped in a velvet texture that caught the dim restaurant light. It wasn't a Tiffany blue, it was darker, like the ocean at midnight. She placed it gently on the white tablecloth, right next to my wine glass. The sound of it touching the table was barely audible. A soft thud, but it felt like a gunshot in the quiet room. "I'm not supposed to do this?" she said, her eyes scanning the room quickly, checking the exits, checking the staff. Professional courtesy usually dictates I just hand over the file to the client who hired me. But in this case, the client is the one getting screwed. I frowned, my architect's brain trying to construct a logical framework for what was happening. "I don't understand. Who are you?" She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "My name doesn't matter right now." "What matters is what's in that box." "Is this a threat?" I asked, my hand moving slightly toward my phone. "No," she said. "It's a mercy." She straightened up, buttoning her coat. She looked at me with a pity that made my stomach churn. I was a powerful man. I was used to envy, respect, fear, even hatred. I was not used to pity. "You'll need this tonight," she said. "Don't open it here. Go home. Pour yourself something stronger than that wine. And sitting here, eating alone while you think your wife is with her sick mother, it's a nice narrative, Ethan. But it's fiction." My heart skipped a beat, a physical jolt like missing a step on a staircase. "How do you know about my wife?" "I know everything," she said simply. "I know where she is. I know who she's with. And I know what they're planning for your retirement party. And trust me, it's not a gold watch." She turned to leave, but I reached out, grabbing her wrist. It was an impulsive move, uncharacteristic of me. Her skin was cold. "Wait, who sent you? Why are you giving me this?" She looked at my hand on her wrist, then back at my face. She didn't pull away, but she didn't soften either. Let's just say I have a low tolerance for people who smile in your face while holding a knife behind your back, especially when the victim is a good man. She gently pulled her arm free. "Open the box, Ethan, tonight after dark." And then she was gone. She walked out of the restaurant with a fluid, silent grace, disappearing into the city night. I sat there, frozen. The restaurant noise rushed back in, the clinking, the murmuring, but it sounded distant now, underwater. I looked at the blue box. It sat there, an alien object in my perfectly curated evening. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Just got a mom's. She's sleeping now, but it looks rough. I'm going to crash on the recliner in her room. Miss you." I stared at the text. Usually, I would feel sympathy. I would worry. But the woman's words echoed in my head. "It's a nice narrative, but it's fiction." My appetite was gone. When David brought the steak, sizzling and perfect, I waved it away. "Pack it up," I said, my voice sounding gravelly to my own ears. "I need the check." "Is everything all right, Mr. Vance?" David asked, concern etching his brow. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I really don't know." I paid the bill, leaving an excessive tip out of habit, and picked up the blue box. It was heavier than it looked. It felt dense, like it contained something far more substantial than jewelry. I slipped it into my suit pocket, where it pressed against my ribs like a tumor. The drive home was a blur. I drove my vintage Jaguar, a car I loved for its mechanical purity, but tonight I couldn't feel the road. The city lights streaked past, buildings I had designed, landmarks I had fought for. Usually, driving through the city felt like a victory lap. Tonight it felt like I was driving through a graveyard of my own making. I lived in the ski line estate, a brutalist masterpiece perched on the cliffs overlooking the river. It was a cold house, stylistically speaking, concrete, glass, steel, but Sarah had filled it with warmth. Rugs, art, soft lighting. As I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Without Sarah's car in the drive, without the lights on in the kitchen, it looked like a fortress, a tomb. I parked the car and walked to the front door, the blue box feeling heavier with every step. The night air was crisp, signaling the coming autumn. I unlocked the heavy oak door and stepped into the foyer. Silence. Not the hum of the restaurant, but the dead silence of an empty house. I didn't turn on the main lights. I walked straight to my study, the inner sanctum where I had drawn the blueprints for my life. I sat down at my mahogany desk, the leather chair creaking under my weight. I placed the blue box in the center of the desk, under the pool of light from the banker's lamp. I poured myself a glass of scotch. Neat. A 20-year-old single malt I was saving for the retirement party. I figured if the woman was right, there wouldn't be much to celebrate then anyway. I took a long drink, the burn grounding me. Then, with trembling hands that had once drawn the steadiest lines in the industry, I reached for the box. "You'll need this tonight." I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in the black velvet, was not a ring or a watch. It was a sleek, silver USB drive, and beneath it a single folded piece of heavy cardstock. I picked up the card first. It was handwritten in elegant, sharp script. "The password for the drive is Alex. Look at the folder marked financials first, then the hotel." "I'm sorry, my breath hitched."
Alex.
"The name of my tower." "The name of my legacy." Whoever this woman was, she knew everything. I turned on my computer. The screen glowed blue in the dark room, casting long shadows against the bookshelves. I plugged the drive in. The computer chimed, a cheerful sound that felt mocking. A dialog box popped up asking for a password. I typed it in, HECLAX. The folder opened. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that made me lightheaded. I hovered the mouse over the folder. This was the event horizon. Once I clicked this, there was no going back. If I pulled the drive out now, I could go to bed. I could believe Sarah was with her mother. I could believe Mark was working late on specs. I could retire in peace. But I was an architect. I dealt in structural integrity. If there was a crack in the foundation, ignoring it wouldn't stop the collapse. It would only make the catastrophe worse. I clicked. The screen populated with a list of folders, arranged by date. The organization was meticulous, almost clinical. It was the work of a professional. The most recent folder was dated today. I followed the note's instructions and opened the folder marked Financials. I expected to see bank statements, maybe evidence of Sarah spending too much on jewelry or Mark skimming a little off the top for personal expenses. Things that would be painful, but forgivable. Things I could write a check to fix. What I saw made the blood drain from my face. It wasn't just skimming. It was a slaughter. There were PDFs of wire transfers, massive ones, moving money from Vanguard Architecture's operating accounts into shell companies I had never heard of. Companies with names like Apex Consulting and Future Horizons. The dates went back 3 years. I opened a spreadsheet titled Liquidation Plan. My eyes scanned the rows and nausea rose in my throat. It was a detailed timeline. They weren't just stealing from the firm, they were leveraging it. They had taken out loans against the firm's assets I owned, using my digital signature. I scrolled down to the bottom of the document. There, listed under Beneficiaries, were 2 names, Sarah Vance, Mark Danton. They were 50 partners in the shell companies. I sat back, gasping for air. The betrayal was so total, so mathematical, it was hard to process emotionally. It was like looking at a blueprint for a bomb that had already been installed in my basement. 3 years. Sarah had been smiling across the breakfast table for 3 years while funneling my life's work into offshore accounts. Mark, the boy I taught to tie a tie, the man I defended when the board said he was too young for partnership, had been systematically gutting the company from the inside. But why? Sarah had access to everything. She didn't need to steal. She was my wife. Everything I had was hers. And Mark, I was giving him the firm. In 2 weeks, he would have it all anyway. I went back to the main directory. The note said to look at the hotel. I clicked the folder. It contained audio files and video clips. The timestamps were recent. The latest one was dated to tonight, 2 hours ago. My hand shook so violently I could barely control the mouse. I clicked on a video file titled Lid Meridian Lobbycam MP4. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed the entrance of a hotel. Not the hotel where Sarah's mother's care home was. This was the St. Regis downtown, about 5 blocks from where I had eaten dinner. A car pulled up. My car. Not the Jaguar I was driving, but Sarah's white Range Rover. The door opened, and Sarah stepped out. She wasn't wearing the comfortable clothes she usually wore to visit her mother. She was wearing a red dress. A dress I had bought her for our 25th anniversary. A dress she said was too tight to wear anymore. She looked stunning, and she looked happy. A moment later, a man stepped out of the revolving doors to greet her. Mark, he wasn't working on structural specs. He was wearing a tuxedo. He walked up to my wife, grabbed her by the waist, and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly peck. It was a kiss of possession, familiar, practiced. Sarah laughed, throwing her head back, her hand resting on his chest. They looked like a power couple. They looked like they owned the world. I watched as the valet took her keys and Mark led her into the hotel, his hand sliding down to rest on her lower back. I paused the video. I stared at the frozen image of my wife and my surrogate son. The rage didn't come immediately. What came first was a profound, hollow confusion. The math didn't work. Sarah was 58. Mark was 42. I knew age gaps happened, but this felt different. This wasn't just lust. The way they moved together, the way they conspired, it was a partnership. I clicked on an audio file marked Meeting Dowd A12 P3. The audio crackled, then voices emerged, clear, high fidelity, recorded in a quiet room, probably a car or a private office. Mark's voice: he's signing the transfer papers at the gala. Once he signs, the liability for the Helix project stays with him personally. We structured the insurance that way, remember. Sarah's voice: are you sure he won't read the fine print? He's meticulous, Mark. A Mark. He trusts me, Sarah. He trusts me more than he trusts himself these days. He thinks he's getting old, losing his edge. I've been planting that seed for months. You look tired, Ethan. Did you forget that meeting, Ethan? He thinks he needs to retire before he makes a mistake. He doesn't realize the mistake is already made. Sarala, soft laugh, you're wicked. What about the house? Mark, the house is in the trust. Once the firm collapses under the debt from the shell companies, the creditors will come for his personal assets. We'll buy the house at auction for pennies on the dollar. You'll get to keep your garden baby. We just have to evict the old man first. Sarah, I feel a little bad. He's been decent. A Mark, decent. He's a dinosaur, Sarah. He's holding us back. He's sitting on a pile of capital he doesn't know how to use. We're just redistributing it. Besides, you said it yourself. You're bored. You've been bored for 20 years. Sarah, that's true. He is boring. He cares more about steel beams than he does about me. The recording ended. I sat in the silence of my study, the scotch turning to acid in my stomach. Boring. Dinosaur. Evict the old man, the glass in my hand shattered. I hadn't realized I was squeezing it. Shards of crystal bit into my palm, and blood mixed with the amber liquid on the desktop. I didn't feel the pain. The physical pain was a dull throb compared to the nuclear detonation happening in my soul. They weren't just cheating, they were planning to destroy me. They were going to frame me for financial mismanagement, saddle me with debt, steal my home, and leave me destitute and humiliated while they lived in my house and ran my firm. Mark, the man I had defended to the board. He's the future of this company. I had said I was right. He was the future, a predatory, parasitic future. And Sarah, he is boring. I looked at the blood dripping from my hand onto the mahogany desk. It stained the paper. I stood up, staggering slightly. The room spun. I needed to do something. I needed to drive to the St. Regis, kick down the door, and what? Shoot them. Scream. No, I looked at the blue box again. The woman, she had given me this. She had given me the weapon. You'll need this tonight. If I went there now, I would be the crazy, jealous old husband. They would spin it. They would say I was losing my mind, just like Mark had been telling everyone. He thinks he's getting old, losing his edge. If I reacted with violence or hysteria, I would be playing right into their narrative. I would prove them right. I wrapped my bleeding hand in a handkerchief. I sat back down. I needed to see the rest. I needed to know the full extent of the rot. I opened a folder named The Gala. It was a draft of a press release. Vanguard Architecture announces restructuring following the resignation of founder Ethan Vance due to health concerns. Mark Danton named CEO, health concerns. They were going to say I was senile. They were going to gaslight the entire industry. There was another document, a medical evaluation. For me, signed by a doctor I had never met. It detailed symptoms of early onset dementia, memory loss, aggression, confusion. Mark had been building a case file on me. Every time I forgot my keys, every time I was grumpy in a meeting, he must have been documenting it, twisting it, feeding it to this doctor. I felt a cold clarity wash over me. The shock was receding, replaced by a glacial, focused hatred. I was an architect. I built things. But to build, you first have to understand the stresses, the loads, the breaking points. They thought I was a crumbling ruin. They thought I was structure waiting to fall over. They forgot that I was the one who designed the foundation. I looked at the timestamp on the computer. Lelas in 4:05 p.m. They were at the St. Regis, together. Probably laughing about the old man eating his steak alone. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I reached for the blue box again. Under the velvet lining, I found a business card I had missed earlier. Clara Vance. Private Investigations. A phone number, Vance. I stared at the name, Clara Vance. My last name. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number. It rang once. You opened it, her voice said. No hello. No pleasantries. Just that raspy, calm voice. Who are you? I asked, my voice steady now, tempered by the cold rage. Why is your last name Vance? There was a pause on the other end, a sound of a lighter flicking, an exhale of smoke. Because, Ethan, she said, I'm your daughter. The words hung in the air, suspended like dust motes in a sunbeam refusing to settle. I'm your daughter. I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. That's impossible, I said. Sarah and I, we never could. We don't have children. Sarah isn't my mother, Clara said. Her voice was devoid of sentimentality. It was factual hard. Think back, Ethan. 42 years ago, Chicago. A waitress named Elena at a diner near the university. You were finishing your master's. She was working double shifts. Elena. The name hit me like a physical blow. A flood of memories I hadn't touched in decades broke through the dam. The diner on 53rd Street. Coffee that tasted like burnt nuts. Elena. Dark eyes. A laugh that made you want to tell her your secrets. We had a brief, intense fling the summer before I moved to New York to start my apprenticeship. We broke it off when I left. It was amicable. I sent a letter a month later. She never replied. Elena, I whispered. She didn't want to hold you back, Clara said. She saw you were going places. She knew she was just a waitress in your story. So when she found out she's pregnant, she didn't call. She raised me alone. She died 6 months ago. Cancer. I closed my eyes. I didn't know. I know you didn't, Clara said. She made me promise not to contact you while she was alive. She had her pride. But after she died, I started looking into you. I wanted to see what kind of man my father was. I wanted to see if you were the genius she talked about. And what did you find? I asked, looking at the screen full of evidence of my stupidity. I found a man who was about to be destroyed, she said. I'm a PI, Ethan. It's what I do. I started watching you just to get a sense of who you were. And then I started watching the people around you. It didn't take long to see the patterns. Sarah meeting Mark in parking garages. The shell companies. The forged medical records. Why didn't you come to me sooner? I needed proof, she said. Hard proof. If I walked in 3 months ago and said, Hi, I'm your secret daughter and your wife is sleeping with your protégé, you would have thrown me out. You would have defended them. You needed to see it. You needed the blue box. She was right. I would have called her a liar and a grifter. Mark was my son, in my head. Sarah was my life. I wouldn't have believed the truth unless it was surgically dissected and laid out in front of me. So, I said, exhaling a breath I felt I'd been holding for 40 years. You're my daughter. Genetically, yes. Emotionally, we're strangers. Don't worry, I'm not looking for a daddy. I'm 45. I'm looking for justice. Elena always spoke highly of you. She said you were a builder. A creator. It pissed me off to see these parasites tearing you down. Where are you? I asked. I'm outside your gate, she said. I figured you might have questions. I looked at the security monitor on my desk. Sure enough, a dark sedan was idling by the intercom. Come in, I said. I pressed the buzzer. 5 minutes later, Clara walked into my study. She looked different in the stark light of the room. I could see the resemblance now. She had my chin, my brow. But she had Elena's eyes. She looked at my hand, wrapped in the bloody handkerchief. She didn't gasp. She just walked over to the wet bar, grabbed a clean towel and a bottle of vodka. Give me your hand, she ordered. I obeyed. She poured the vodka over the cut. I flinched but didn't pull away. She wrapped it tightly with the clean towel. You're a mess, she said. My life is over, I replied, gesturing to the computer screen. They've won. They have the money, the leverage, the plan. The gala is in 2 weeks. If I fire them now, they trigger the debt. They release the medical records. They burn the company to the ground. Clara sat on the edge of the desk, looking at the screen. She scrolled through the liquidation plan. They haven't won yet, she said. They have a plan. But plans have structural weaknesses. You of all people should know that. They have the element of surprise, I argued. They think I'm senile. Exactly. Clara's eyes gleamed. That is your greatest asset. They think you are weak. They think you are blind. They think you are a dinosaur. So be the dinosaur. What do you mean? Let them believe the lie, she said. For the next 2 weeks, you play the part. You be the forgetful, tired old man. You let Mark guide you. You let Sarah comfort you. You lull them into absolute security. And while they are busy counting their chickens, we dismantle the coop. She reached into her bag and pulled out another folder. A paper one this time. I've done the recon, she said. Mark is greedy. He's sloppy with his digital footprint when he thinks no one is watching. The shell companies, they're registered in the Caymans, but he accessed them from the company server. That's a felony. And Sarah, she's been signing your name on documents. That's forgery. If I go to the police, the scandal destroys the firm anyway, I said. My legacy is ruined. We don't go to the police yet, Clara said. We go to the gala. I looked at her. The gala. They want a show. She smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that I realized I had seen in the mirror many times. Let's give them a show. You're an architect, Ethan. You don't just demo a building. You implode it. Controlled demolition. We bring the whole thing down on top of their heads in front of everyone they tried to impress. We save the firm, we keep your assets, and we send them to prison. But we do it publicly. We do it so completely that they can never crawl out from the rubble. I looked at the woman, my daughter, and then back at the screen where Mark was kissing my wife. The sadness was gone. The shock was gone. I felt a cold, hard resolve settling in my chest. It felt like steel. I need to know everything, I said. Every account number. Every date. Every lie. We have all night, Clara said, pulling a chair up next to me. But first, you need to answer one question. What? Can you look your wife in the eye tomorrow morning and tell her you love her? I thought about Sarah. 30 years. The breakfasts. The vacations. The lies. I can, I said slowly, because the woman I loved is dead. The woman in my house is just a squatter, and I'm about to serve an eviction notice. Clara nodded. Good. Then let's get to work. We spent the rest of the night mapping out the battlefield. Clara showed me how they had routed the funds. It was clever, I had to admit. Mark had used the Helix Tower project budget to hide the transfers, marking them as consulting fees and material overages. Because the project was so massive and experimental, cost overruns were expected. He had hidden his theft in plain sight, camouflaged by my own ambition. As the sun began to rise, painting the river outside in shades of gray and gold, I felt a strange new energy. I wasn't the tired old man anymore. I was the architect again. But this time, I wasn't designing a skyscraper. I was designing a trap. They expect me to sign the transfer papers at the gala, I said, looking at the timeline. At 8:00 p.m., right after the toast. So we have 14 days, Clara said. 14 days to gather enough evidence to not just fire them, but bury them. I need to act normal, I muttered, rehearsing. I need to be the doting husband, the proud mentor. Can you do it? I stood up and walked to the window. Sarah's Range Rover was pulling into the driveway. She was back from her mother's. I watched her get out of the car. She looked tired, probably from a night of passion with Mark, not from sitting in a hospital chair. She checked her reflection in the side mirror, fixing her hair. Watch me, I said to Clara. I heard the front door open. Ethan. Sarah's voice called out, sweet and concerned. Ethan, are you awake? I looked at Clara. She gave me a sharp nod, then quickly gathered her things and slipped into the shadows of the adjoining library room. She would wait there until the coast was clear. I walked out of the study and into the hallway to meet my wife. She was taking off her coat. She looked up and smiled, that same smile I had woken up to for 3 decades. Hey, honey, she said, coming over to hug me. She smelled of stale hotel soap and expensive cologne, Mark's cologne. I missed you. Mom had a terrible night. I hugged her back. Hug back. I felt her heart beating against mine. A liar's heart. I missed you too, I said, my voice steady, my expression open and vulnerable. I was just so worried about you. She pulled back and touched my cheek. You look tired, Ethan. Did you sleep at all? No, I lied. I was just thinking about the future. About us. She smiled, and for a second I saw the predator behind the eyes. The future is going to be wonderful, Ethan. Just wait until the gala. Everything will be settled. Yes, I said, smiling back. Everything will be settled. The hardest part of acting is not the lines, it's the silence. It's sitting in a room with the people who are plotting your demise and not screaming. For the next 2 weeks I had to become the man they wanted me to be, a confused, fading relic. A ghost in my own life. Monday morning at Vanguard Architecture used to be my favorite time. The energy of the studio, the smell of fresh coffee and plotted paper, the anticipation of a new week of creation. Now walking into the glass-walled offices on the 40th floor felt like walking into a lion's den wearing a steak vest. I walked past the reception desk. Kelly, the receptionist who had been with us for 5 years, gave me a pitying smile. Good morning, Mr. Vance. Mark said you might be coming in late today. Do you need help with your calendar? Mark said. The narrative was already being spun. Mark had probably told the staff I was having episodes. No, Kelly, I'm fine, I said, purposely fumbling with my briefcase, letting it drop to the floor. Papers spilled out. She jumped up to help. Oh, let me get that, Mr. Vance! Clumsy hands, I muttered, shaking my head. Just tired. I saw her exchange a glance with a junior architect nearby. The glance said, he's losing it. Good, let them believe it. I walked into my office. Or rather, what used to be my office. Mark was sitting at my desk, my custom-made Danish teak desk. On the phone, he didn't even stand up when I entered. Yeah, I'll handle the change order. Ethan is... well, he's taking a step back. Yeah, okay, bye. He hung up and looked at me, a mask of concern sliding over his face. Ethan, I didn't expect you in until after. How are you feeling? A bit foggy, I said, rubbing my temples. I wanted to check the specs on the Helix lobby, the marble sourcing. Mark sighed, standing up and walking around the desk to guide me to the guest chair, my guest chair. Ethan, we went over this last week. We switched to the Italian supplier. Remember, you signed off on it. I hadn't signed off on it. The Italian supplier was one of the fronts for his kickback scheme. Clara and I had traced the supplier to a P.O. box in New Jersey owned by a shell company connected to Mark. Did I? I blinked, feigning confusion. I don't recall. It's okay, Mark said, patting my shoulder. His touch made my skin crawl. That's why I'm here. To remember the details so you don't have to. You've earned a rest, Ethan. Why stress about marble? You're a good lad? Mark, I said, forcing a weak smile. I don't know what I'd do without you. Just relax. he said. Actually, while you're here, Sarah sent over some documents for the estate planning. Just standard updates to the trust. Since you're retiring, we need to separate your personal liability from the firm's insurance. It protects you. He slid a folder across the desk. I opened it. It was thick with legal jargon. Buried on page 4 was a clause that granted Mark power of attorney over professional assets in the event of incapacitation. And incapacitation was defined loosely enough that a couple of bad days in a doctor's note, like the fake one he already had, would trigger it. It's a lot of reading, I said, pushing it away. My eyes aren't what they used to be. I summarized it for you. Mark pressed a hint of impatience in his voice. It just says you get to keep your money and I take the risk. It's a win-win. We need it signed before the gala to announce the transition. I'll take it home, I said. Read it with a brandy tonight. Mark hesitated. He didn't like that. He wanted it signed now under his supervision. Sure, just don't lose it, okay? Sarah said you've been misplacing things lately. I won't lose it. I promised. I spent the rest of the day wandering the office, playing the role of the distracted founder. I asked interns the same questions 3 times. I called the structural engineer David instead of Daniel. I saw the whispers. I saw the sad shakes of heads. It was working. But I wasn't just wandering, I was scouting. Clara had given me a shopping list. We needed physical access to Mark's computer, specifically when he was logged in as an admin. We also needed to know where he kept the physical ledger. Clara was convinced that for the kickbacks, he kept a physical record. Guys like Mark, she had told me. They don't trust the cloud with the real dirt. They like to touch their money. He has a notebook or a drive or a stash. At 4:00 p.m., Mark left for a site visit. I knew from the tracking app Clara had installed on his car that the site was actually a condo in the city, a condo bought by Apex Consulting. Once he was gone, the office relaxed. I waited until 1600 p.m. when most of the staff had cleared out. The cleaning crew wouldn't arrive until 1800. I walked back into my office. Mark's office now. I closed the blinds. I'm in. I whispered into the lapel of my jacket. Clara had rigged me with a wire, a tiny microphone connected to a recorder and a transmitter. She was in a van in the parking garage. Clear. Clara's voice crackled in my earpiece. He's at the condo. You have maybe an hour before he heads to meet Sarah for dinner. I sat at the computer. Locked. Plug in the USB, Clara instructed. I inserted the drive she had given me, not the blue one, but a new one loaded with a keylogger and a brute force script. A black terminal window popped up on the screen, lines of code scrolling faster than I could read. It's bypassing the admin lock, Clara said. Give it 2 minutes. While the computer worked, I started searching the room. I looked for the physical ledger. I checked the drawers. Nothing but pens and breath mints. I checked the bookshelf. Just architectural digests and code books. Think like him, Clara said. Where would he hide his trophy? I looked around the room. Mark was arrogant. He wouldn't hide it in a hole in the wall. He would hide it somewhere that looked like part of the business. My eyes landed on the model of the Helix Tower sitting on a pedestal in the corner. It was a beautiful, 4-foot tall scale model made of acrylic and steel. It had a hollow core for the lighting effects. I walked over to it. The base was heavy black marble. The model, I said. Check the base, Clara said. I knelt down. The base looked solid, but there was a faint seam on the back side near the power cord for the LEDs. I pressed on the corner. Nothing. I tried sliding it. It moved. A small panel slid open. Inside was a cavity. My heart hammered. I reached in. My hand brushed against leather. I pulled out a black Moleskine notebook. I got it. I whispered. Open it, Clara said. Verify. I flipped it open. It wasn't sketches. It was dates, names, and numbers. March 12th, a stone could have 45,000 as a check fave 402, April 4, Apex Consulting, 123rd, a wire next to some entries, initials, SV Sarah Vance, jackpot. I said, his writing down or cut? Take pictures, Clara ordered. Every page, high-res. Then put it back exactly how you found it. We can't take it yet. If he notices it's gone, he'll run. My hands were shaking, but I forced them to be steady. I snapped photos of every page with my phone, which immediately uploaded them to Clara's secure cloud. I heard the ding of the elevator down the hall. Ethan. Clara's voice was sharp. Someone is coming up. The elevator just moved to 40. It's too early for the cleaners. I hissed.
It's Sarah, Clara said.
Her tracker just pinged. She's in the building. A panic, cold and sharp, spiked in my chest. If Sarah found me here, rifling through a hidden compartment in the model, the senile old man, act would be over. She would know. Put it back! Clara shouted in my ear. I shoved the notebook back into the base and slid the panel shut. It clicked just as I heard the click of heels on the polished concrete floor of the outer hallway. The computer. The USB drive was still in it. I lunged across the room. The screen said access granted. I ripped the USB drive out. The screen went back to the login prompt. Ethan. Sarah's voice called out. Are you in here? I didn't have time to sit down. I didn't have time to hide the USB drive in my pocket properly. I dropped it into my coffee mug on the desk, which luckily still had cold, dark coffee in it. I turned around just as the door opened. I stood there, staring blankly at the wall, swaying slightly. Sarah stood in the doorway, wearing a trench coat. She looked suspicious. Ethan, what are you doing in the dark? I slowly turned my head to look at her. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I was looking for the light switch. I couldn't find the light switch. Sarah, it used to be here. I pointed to the wrong wall. She stared at me. Her eyes scanned the room. She looked at the desk. She looked at the model. For a second, I thought she didn't buy it. I thought she saw the intelligence in my eyes. Then her shoulders dropped. She sighed, a sound of annoyance mixed with relief. Oh, Ethan, she said, walking over and taking my arm. The switch is over there. Come on. You shouldn't be here this late. Mark told me you were having a bad day. Who is Mark? I asked. It was a risk. Overselling it. She paused. She looked at me, searching my face. Then a slow, cruel smile touched her lips. She believed it. She actually believed I was gone. Mark is your friend. Honey, she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Come on. Let's go home. I'll drive you. I don't think you should be driving the Jaguar anymore. She led me out of the office. As we walked to the elevator, I looked back at the desk. The coffee mug sat there, hiding the digital skeleton key to their destruction. I'm hungry, I said like a child. We'll get you some soup, she said, and then we can sign those papers Mark gave you. Soup sounds good, I said. As the elevator doors closed, I felt a tear run down my cheek. Sarah saw it and wiped it away with her thumb. Don't cry. Honey, she whispered. It's all going to be over soon. She had no idea how right she was. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of duality. By day, I was the shuffling geriatric, sitting in my garden wrapped in a blanket, staring at the birds. By night, when Sarah was asleep, or staying with her mother, I was in the basement of the guest house, where Clara had set up her command center. The guest house was supposed to be for Mark when he visited. He never used it. He preferred hotels. So it became our war room. We have the financial trail. Clara said, pinning a printout of the bank transfers to the corkboard. We have the audio of the conspiracy. We have the video of the affair. And now, thanks to the notebook, we have the dates of the bribes. It's enough to send them to jail for 20 years, I said, looking at the web of evidence. It was meticulous. Beautiful, in a grotesque way. It is, Clara agreed. But jail isn't enough. We need to make sure they can't fight back. Mark is slippery, if we just arrest him. He'll claim you authorized it all in your confused state. He has that power of attorney you signed. I smiled. The one I signed with invisible ink. Clara laughed. It was the first time I had heard her laugh. A real laugh. It sounded like Elena's. That was a nice touch. The ink disappears in 48 hours. By the time he tries to use it, it'll be a blank page. But you're right, I said. I'll fight dirty. He'll attack my competency. He'll say the evidence is fabricated by a paranoid old man. That's why we need a third party, Clara said. Someone impeccable. Someone whose word is gospel in this town. Judge Holloway, I said. Arthur Holloway was a retired federal judge and an old friend of my father's. He was 80, sharp as a tack, and had a reputation for absolute, terrifying integrity. He was also on the board of the gala committee. Will he help? Clara asked. He hates corruption, I said, and he hates Mark. He called him a plastic shark at the Christmas party last year. Okay, Clara said. You need to get to him. Without Sarah knowing. I have a lunch with him tomorrow. Sarah thinks it's just two old men reminiscing. Wear the wire, Clara said, and bring the tablet with the evidence. Show him everything. The next day I met Arthur at his club. It was a fortress of old money and silence. We sat in leather wingback chairs, sipping tea. I dropped the act. I sat up straight, my eyes clear. Arthur, I said, I'm not losing my mind. But someone is trying to steal it. He looked at me over his spectacles. He didn't blink. I suspected as much, Ethan. You've been playing the fool a little too loudly. It lacks your usual subtlety. I chuckled. I needed them to feel safe. I slid the tablet across the table. Arthur scrolled through the files. He watched the video of Sarah and Mark. He read the ledger pages. His expression never changed, but his knuckles on the tablet turned white. This is abominable, he said softly. The betrayal is absolute. I'm going to expose them at the gala, I said. I want to burn it down, Arthur, but I need credibility. When I take the stage, they will try to drag me off. They will call for a doctor. I need you to stand up, Arthur nodded. You want a witness? I want a hammer, I said. I want you to validate the evidence. If you say it's real, the room will believe it. Arthur took a sip of tea. He placed the cup down with a decisive clink. I will be there, he said, and I will bring the district attorney as my +1. He owes me a favor. I breathed out. The trap was set. The final piece of the plan was the presentation itself. The gala was being held in the grand ballroom of the Helix Tower, the building I had designed, the building Mark was stealing. There would be a massive leady wall behind the stage. Mark had prepared a slideshow, the legacy of Ethan Vance. It was full of nostalgic photos meant to frame my career as something in the past tense. Clara and I spent the final night recoding the presentation file. We need to time it perfectly. Clara said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. When Mark calls you up, the music swells. The screen will show the logo. Then, when you say the trigger phrase, I'll switch the feed. What's the trigger phrase? I asked. Clara looked at me. Make it something they won't expect, something that sounds like capitulation. I thought about it. I thought about the blue box. I thought about the fiction the woman in the restaurant had warned me about. The trigger phrase is, I am ready to rest now. Clara typed it into the script queue. Done. When you say that, the slideshow overrides, and the audio from the car plays over the speakers. It's going to be a massacre, I said quietly. It's going to be justice, Clara corrected. She handed me a glass of water. You should sleep. Dad, tomorrow is the big day. Dad. She had said it, not ironically, not biologically, but like she meant it. I looked at her. Thank you, Clara, for everything. Alina would be proud of you. She looked away, hiding a sudden shine in her eyes. Get some sleep, old man. You have a performance to give. I went upstairs to the main house. Sarah was in bed, wearing a silk sleep mask. I climbed in beside her. Did you sign the papers, honey? She mumbled, half asleep. Yes, I whispered. I signed everything. Good. She sighed, patting my hand. We're going to be so happy. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I listened to the breathing of the woman who had shared my bed for 30 years, the woman who was planning to throw me into a facility and spend my fortune with her lover. I felt a profound sadness, but it was distant now, like looking at a ruin from a mile away. The sadness had calcified into something harder. Tomorrow the Helix Tower would open, and tomorrow Sarah and Mark's world would collapse. The Helix Tower was magnificent. The atrium soared 60 stories up, a twisting canyon of glass and steel. For the gala, the lobby had been transformed into a wonderland of white roses, champagne fountains, and floating lights. 500 guests. The mayor, the city council, the titans of industry, the press. Everyone who mattered was there. I stood near the entrance, leaning heavily on a cane I didn't need. Sarah was on my arm, wearing a shimmering silver gown that cost $12,000, paid for by Apex Consulting. Mark stood on my other side, looking dashing in a tuxedo, playing the dutiful son. Just smile and wave, Ethan, Mark whispered in my ear. Don't try to talk to too many people. You get confused, remember. Smile and wave, I repeated hollowly. Smile and wave. Gwess approached us, offering congratulations. So sorry to hear about your health, Ethan, the CEO of a rival firm said, looking at me with vulture-like glee. But Mark is a capable successor. Mark is very capable, I mumbled, looking past him. I saw Arthur Holloway in the crowd. He gave me a microscopic nod. Next to him stood a stern-looking man in a gray suit, the district attorney. The lights dimmened. The orchestra swelled. It was time. Mark bounded up onto the stage. He grabbed the microphone, his charisma radiating like heat. Ladies and gentlemen, he boomed, thank you for joining us on this historic night. We are here to celebrate a vision, a legacy. The Helix Tower is not just a building, it is a testament to the genius of one man, my mentor, my partner, my father figure, Ethan Vance. Applause thundered. Mark wiped a fake tear from his eye. But, he continued, his voice dropping to a somber register, as many know, time is an architect none of us can outbid. Ethan has decided with a heavy heart to step down, to rest, to let the next generation carry the torch. He gestured to me. The spotlight hit me, blindingly bright. Please, Mark said, join me in welcoming the man of the hour, Ethan Vance. Sarah squeezed my arm. Go on, honey. Just rid the cards I gave you. Keep it short. I shuffled toward the stairs. I made a show of tripping on the first step. The crowd gasped. Mark rushed down to help me, gripping my elbow firmly. I got you, old man, he whispered, his grip painful. Don't embarrass us. He helped me to the podium. He adjusted the mic. He stayed close, hovering, ready to pull me away if I started babbling. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the pity. I saw the anticipation. I looked at Sarah in the front row. She was beaming, her eyes locked on Mark. I took a breath. I straightened my spine. I let the cane drop from my hand. It clattered loudly on the stage floor. Mark flinched. He reached for me. Ethan, let's get you. I pushed his hand away, hard. I leaned into the microphone. My voice wasn't the raspy whisper I had been using for 2 weeks. It was the deep, resonant baritone that had commanded boardrooms for 40 years. Thank you, Mark, I said. The clarity of my voice silenced the room instantly. For that creative introduction. Mark froze. He stared at me, his smile faltering. Tonight is indeed about legacy, I continued. It's about what we build. And what we destroy. I looked directly at the camera streaming to the giant Uddy wall behind me. For the last few months, a narrative has been constructed about me. That I am sick, that I am confused, that I am unfit. I paused, and like many things built by my partner Mark, that narrative is structurally unsound. It is a fraud. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sarah stood up, her face pale. She made a cut-it motion to Mark. Mark stepped forward, his face tight. Okay, Ethan, that's enough excitement. Let's get you some water. I don't need water. Mark, I roared, the sound echoing off the glass walls. I need the truth. I turned to the tech booth in the back, where I knew Clara had overridden the controls. I have served this company for 40 years, I said to the audience. I thought I was leaving it in the hands of family. Instead, I was leaving it in the hands of thieves. Cut the mic, Mark screamed at the sound guy. But the sound guy was locked out. Clara had the system. I am ready to rest now, I said. The trigger phrase. Behind me the giant screen flickered. The legacy slideshow vanished. In its place, the video from the St. Regis Hotel lobby appeared. Massive. High definition. Sarah getting out of the car. Mark kissing her. The intimate, possessive groping. The crowd gasped. A collective shocked inhale that sucked the air out of the room. Sarah screamed. She actually screamed. Then the audio cut in. The speakers blasted Mark's voice, clear as a bell. He's a dinosaur, Sarah. We're just redistributing it. We'll buy the house at auction for pennies. We just have to evict the old man first. Mark looked at the screen, then at me. His face went from confusion to absolute white-hot terror. He lunged for me. Turn it off! He shrieked.
It's a deepfake. He's crazy.
He grabbed my lapel, raising a fist. Sit down, Mark. A voice boomed from the floor. It was Judge Arthur Holloway. He was standing, pointing a finger at the stage like a gavel. Next to him, the district attorney was signaling to 2 uniformed officers who were emerging from the wings. The evidence has been reviewed. Holloway announced to the stunned room. It is authentic, and there is more. The screen changed again. It showed the ledger pages, the wire transfers, the forged medical documents. I looked at Mark. He was trembling. He looked at Sarah, but she was backing away, shaking her head, trying to distance herself from him. You wanted the firm. Mark, I said calmly, leaning into the mic so everyone could hear the final nail being driven in. You wanted the house. You wanted my wife. Well, you can have the liability. You can have the shame. As for my wife, I looked down at Sarah. She was crying now, mascara running, reaching out a hand toward me. Ethan, please, I can explain. You're fired, I said. I looked back at Mark. The police were on the stage now. And you, I said to him. You're evicted. The silence that followed my eviction of Mark and Sarah was brief. It was shattered by the chaotic symphony of reality crashing down. The ballroom, previously a sanctuary of polite society and clinking champagne flutes, dissolved into a frenzy of flashing camera bulbs, shouting reporters, and the heavy, authoritative boots of the police officers ascending the stage. I stood at the podium, gripping the wood, watching the destruction of the life I had known. It was a controlled demolition, just as Clara had promised, but standing in the dust cloud was still suffocating. Mark was not going quietly. As the officers approached him, the suave, charming executive mask cracked completely, revealing the cornered animal beneath. He swung wildly at the first officer, a young man who easily sidestepped the blow and pinned Mark's arm behind his back. Get off me. Mark screamed, his voice cracking. Do you know who I am? I am the CEO of this company. That man is senile. He's mentally incompetent. This is a setup. He looked at me, his eyes bulging with manic desperation. Ethan, tell them. Tell them about the doctors. Tell them about your memory lapses. I leaned into the microphone one last time. I remember everything, Mark, I said, my voice calm and amplified across the room. I remember the Italian marble you swapped for cheap knockoffs. I remember the Cayman accounts, and I remember exactly what you said about me in the car. The crowd murmured. The DA, standing tall next to Judge Holloway, signaled the officers. Get him out of here. As they dragged Mark away, he passed Sarah. She was standing frozen near the stairs, clutching her silver gown as if it were armor. She looked at Mark, expecting him to save her, to come up with one of his brilliant, slippery lies. Instead, Mark spat at her. You stupid cow! He yelled, his face twisted in hate. You said he was out of it! You said he signed the papers! This is your fault? The spit landed on the hem of her dress. Sarah recoiled as if slapped. She watched her lover, her co-conspirator, throw her to the wolves to save his own skin. It was the final betrayal in a night defined by them. Then, the officers turned to her. "Sarah Vance," the lead officer asked. I didn't do anything." She stammered, backing away, her heels clicking on the hardwood stage. She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. They looked genuine, but I knew better. Sarah was a master of tears. "Ethan, please." He manipulated me. "He told me you were sick. I was just trying to protect the firm, to protect us." I looked down at her from the podium. 30 years. I saw the ghost of the woman I married. The woman who loved gardening, who made terrible coffee, who held my hand at my father's funeral. But that woman was gone. She had been replaced by this stranger in a $12,000 dress paid for with stolen money. "The forensic accounting says otherwise, Sarah," I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "You signed the checks. You opened the shell companies. You weren't a victim. You were a partner."
Ethan,
She shrieked as the officer took her arm.
I'm your wife. You can't let them take me. Ethan.
I turned my back on her. I walked over to the tech booth where Clara was shutting down the system. I didn't watch them handcuff Sarah. I didn't watch them lead her out through the gauntlet of paparazzi. I heard it, though. I heard the questions shouted by the press, the popping of flashes, the wail of sirens starting up outside. "Are you okay?" Clara asked. She had pulled her cap down low, staying out of the camera's view.
No, I said honestly, but I'm standing. That's enough for tonight?
She said. "Let's get you out the back." The days that followed were a blur of legalities and revelations. The gala incident, as the press dubbed it, became national news. The video of Mark and Sarah in the hotel lobby was played on every loop, a viral testament to greed and hubris. I didn't go into the office. I couldn't. I stayed at the Skyline estate, which suddenly felt very big and very empty. But it wasn't quiet. The district attorney's office became my second home. We spent hours going over the evidence. Clara's work was impeccable. The invisible ink on the power of attorney document became a key piece of the investigation. Mark had tried to use it the morning after his arrest, attempting to transfer funds from his jail cell phone before his assets were frozen. When the lawyers looked at the physical document he had filed, the signature line was blank. The ink had vanished. He was charged with attempted fraud on top of everything else. But the most painful part wasn't the legal battle with Mark. It was the dissolution of my marriage. 3 days after the arrest, Sarah made bail. Her mother, who was indeed sick, but not as sick as Sarah had claimed, put up her house as collateral. I was sitting on the terrace drinking coffee and watching the river, when the gate buzzer rang. "It's Mrs. Vance," the security guard said over the intercom. "She says she lives here. Let her in," I said. "But stay by the door." I knew this conversation had to happen. I needed it to happen. She drove up in a rental car. The Range Rover had been impounded as evidence. She walked up the stone path to the terrace. She wasn't wearing the red dress or the silver gown. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup. She looked 10 years older than she had at the gala. She stopped a few feet away from me. She didn't try to hug me this time. "Ethan," she said softly. "Sarah," I replied, not offering her a seat. "I came to get some clothes," she said, "and to talk." "You can take your clothes," I said. "The rest stays. The jewelry, the art, the furniture. Anything bought in the last 3 years is subject to the asset freeze. The feds will be cataloging it next week." She flinched. "Is that all I am to you, an asset freeze?" "You tell me," I said, putting down my coffee cup. "I was just a dinosaur to you, a boring old man you needed to evict."
I never said that, she protested. That was Mark.
He twisted everything. He made me feel like we were doing it for you. He said the firm was in trouble, that you were making mistakes, that we needed to take control to save your legacy. "Stop," I said. The anger flared up, hot and bright. "Stop lying. I heard the tapes, Sarah. I heard you laughing. I heard you say you were bored. I heard you planning to buy this house at auction. You weren't saving me. You were burying me." She fell silent. She looked at the ground, then back at me, her eyes hardening. The sorrow vanished, replaced by a cold, transactional look I had only seen her use on contractors. "I gave you 30 years. Ethan," she spat. 30 years of being the architect's wife. Standing in your shadow. Listening to you drone on about structural integrity and tensile strength while I withered away.
I wanted to feel something. Mark made me feel alive.
"And I made you rich," I countered. "I gave you a life most people only dream of. If you were unhappy, you could have left. You could have asked for a divorce. I would have given you half. I would have been fair." "Half wasn't enough," she sneered. "I wanted it all. I earned it. I put up with your long hours, your obsession with your buildings. I deserved it all. There it was. The truth. No more tears, no more victimhood. Just pure, unadulterated entitlement. Well, I said, standing up, no, you have nothing. The lawyers tell me that because of the criminal fraud, the prenup is ironclad. And since you used marital assets to fund a criminal enterprise, you're liable for half the restitution. You won't walk away with half, Sarah. You'll walk away with debt. She stared at me, her face pale. The reality of her situation was finally hitting her. She wasn't just divorced, she was ruined. You can't do this, she whispered. I already did, I said. Get your clothes. The guard will escort you out. If you take anything else, I'll have your bail revoked. She looked at me one last time, searching for a crack in the foundation, a sign of the man who used to bring her tulips on Sundays. I loved you once, she said. I know, I replied. That's the only reason you're not in a cell right now. Goodbye, Sarah. She turned and walked into the house. 10 minutes later, she walked out with 2 suitcases. She didn't look back. I watched her car disappear down the driveway. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would feel relieved. Instead, I just felt tired. It was a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with grief. I was mourning the death of a lie. That evening, Clara came over. She brought takeout, Thai food, which I hadn't eaten in years because Sarah hated the smell of curry. We sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by the silence of the big house. The board called. Clara said, digging into her pad thai. They want you back. They want to reinstate you as CEO immediately. The stock took a hit, but the public sympathy is massive. They're calling you the Iron Architect on Twitter. I chuckled. Iron Architect. Sounds like a comic book character. You kind of are. She smiled. You took down 2 villains with a PowerPoint presentation. That superhero stuff. I don't want to be CEO, I said, looking around the room. I meant what I said on that stage. I'm ready to rest. Not the kind of rest they wanted for me, the graveyard or the nursing home, but real rest. I want to travel. I want to see the buildings I never got to visit. The Pantheon, the Burj Khalifa, the ancient temples in Kyoto. So, who runs Vanguard? Clara asked. If you step down, the vultures will circle again. I looked at her. She was wearing a leather jacket and combat boots. She looked nothing like the corporate sharks I was used to. She was rougher, sharper, more real. You, I said. Clara choked on a noodle. Me, Ethan. I'm a PI. I find cheating husbands and skip tracers. I don't run architecture firms. I don't know the first thing about blueprints. You know about people? I said. You know about rot. You know how to find the cracks before the building falls down. Vanguard doesn't need another designer right now. We have hundreds of talented architects. What we need is a guardian. Someone to clean up the mess Mark left, to restructure the compliance, to make sure no one ever steals from us again. Chief Operating Officer, she mused, testing the title. Chief Strategy Officer, I corrected, with a focus on internal security. She put down her fork. She looked at me, her dark eyes searching mine. You'd trust me? You've known me for 3 weeks. I broke into your life with a blue box. You saved my life with a blue box, I said. And you're my daughter. Elena always said I was a builder. Well, I want to build a relationship with you, and I want you to help me rebuild my company. Clara was silent for a long moment. She looked out at the city lights. I'll have to fire a lot of people, she warned. Mark's cronies, fire them all, I said. Burn the dead wood? She grinned, and it was a wolfish, dangerous grin. Okay, Dad, I'm in. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. It was a slow, grinding process of depositions and hearings. I had to testify against the man I once treated as a son. I had to sit in a room and watch video footage of my wife mocking me. It was humiliating, but it was necessary. The collateral damage wasn't just my marriage or my friendship with Mark. It was the firm's reputation. Clients were nervous. We lost 3 major contracts in the first month. The Helix Tower became a tourist attraction, but for the wrong reasons. People came to see the scene of the crime, not the architecture. But slowly, under Clara's ruthless management, the ship began to right itself. She fired the CFO, the HR director, and 3 project managers who were complicit in Mark's schemes. She installed transparency protocols that were borderline paranoid but effective. I spent my days consulting, offering guidance, but staying out of the daily grind. I started reading again. I started drawing again, not buildings, but sketches. Charcoal portraits. I drew Elena from memory. I drew Clara. I was healing. The wound was deep, and it would leave a scar, but the infection was gone. One afternoon, 6 months after the gala, I received a call from Arthur Holloway. The sentencing is tomorrow, he said. Do you want to be there?
Yes,
I said immediately. I need to see the end of the story. The courtroom was packed. It seemed the public's appetite for the Vance scandal hadn't waned. I sat in the front row, Clara on my right, Arthur on my left. Mark and Sarah were brought in separately. Mark looked like a wraith. The months in county jail had stripped him of his polish. His hair was unkempt, his skin sallow. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the table, his jaw clenched. Sarah looked diminished. She had lost weight. Her hair was dyed a dull brown, and she wore a cheap gray suit. She looked at me when she entered, her eyes pleading, but I held her gaze with zero emotion until she looked away. The judge, not Holloway, but a severe woman named Justice Pendergast, read the verdict. Mark had pleaded guilty to 17 counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. His lawyer had tried for a plea deal, but the DA, bolstered by the invisible ink incident, had refused to budge. Mr. Danton, Justice Pendergast said, peering over her glasses, you were given a position of immense trust. You were given a future most people would kill for. Instead, you chose to act like a parasite. You devoured the host that fed you. She paused. The room held its breath. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 12. You are also ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $12 million. Mark slumped in his chair. He put his head in his hands. 15 years. He would be nearly 60 when he got out. He had stolen my 60s from me, so the court was taking his 40s and 50s from him. It was a grim kind of symmetry. Then it was Sarah's turn. She stood up, trembling. Her lawyer spoke about her being influenced, about her lack of prior criminal record. Mrs. Vance, the judge said, while it is clear Mr. Danton was the architect of this scheme, you were the keyholder. You allowed him in. You betrayed a sacred vow for financial gain. Greed is not a defense. I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation. Sarah wailed. It was a guttural, ugly sound. She collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. I can't go to prison! I can't! As the bailiffs moved to take them away, Mark finally looked at me. His eyes were dead. There was no fire left, no arrogance. Just the hollow look of a man who realized he had traded a kingdom for a few years of luxury hotels. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded once. A final acknowledgement. Goodbye. Clara squeezed my hand. It's over, she whispered. Yes, I said. It's over. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright spring sunshine. The reporters were there shouting questions. Messer. Vance! How do you feel?
As a justice.
What's next for Vanguard? I stopped. I adjusted my coat. I looked at the cameras. Justice has been served, I said simply. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a building to inspect. I pushed through the crowd, Clara flanking me like a bodyguard. We didn't go to a building site. We went to the cemetery. It was a quiet plot on the north side of the city, a small headstone under an oak tree. Elena Ross, 1960-2024. It was the first time I had visited. I hadn't known she was dead until Clara told me. I hadn't known she was alive for 40 years. I placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grass. I'm sorry I wasn't there, I said to the stone. I'm sorry I didn't know. Clara stood beside me, her hands in her pockets. She didn't blame you, Dad. She really didn't. She made her choices. She just wanted to make sure I was okay. You're more than okay, I said, putting my arm around her. You're incredible. We stood there for a long time, the wind rustling the leaves. It was a strange family reunion. A man, his newfound daughter, and the ghost of the woman who connected them. But it felt more real, more grounded than any family dinner I had had in the last 3 decades. So, Clara said, breaking the silence. What now? You officially retired this morning. Vanguard is mine to run, well to manage. Now, I said, taking a deep breath of the fresh air. I think I'm going to Paris. Paris. I never took Sarah to Paris, I said. She wanted to go to Milan for the shopping. But I always wanted to see the Louvre. I want to sit in a cafe and sketch the architecture. I want to drink wine that doesn't taste like betrayal. Sounds cliché, Clara teased. It's a classic for a reason, I countered. Come with me? Clara blinked. What? I have a company to run. You just appointed me CSO. The company can run itself for 2 weeks, I said. You've fired all the bad guys. The systems are clean. Arthur is acting chairman of the board. He can hold the fort. Come with me. I want to get to know my daughter, and I want to show you how a real architect looks at a city. She looked at me surprised. Then a slow smile spread across her face. I do speak a little French. Elena insisted. Then it settled. I said, pack your bags. We leave Friday. But the trip to Paris was the beginning of the rest of my life. We walked miles every day. I showed her the flying buttresses of Notre Dame, the ironwork of the Eiffel Tower, the modern lines of the Pompidou. We talked. We argued about politics. We laughed. I learned that she loved spicy food, hated jazz as a flaw I promised to correct, and had a cat named Sherlock. I learned what it was like to be a father. It was terrifying and wonderful. One evening, we were sitting at a bistro in Montmartre, overlooking the city as the sun set. It was a view not unlike the one from my terrace at home, but here the light was softer, warmer. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the blue box. I had kept it. The USB drive was gone, turned over to the FBI, but I kept the box. I set it on the table. "Why do you keep that thing?" Clara asked, sipping her wine. "It's a reminder of the worst night of your life." "No," I said, running my thumb over the velvet. "It's a reminder of the night I woke up. It's a reminder that sometimes you have to tear a building down to the studs to find out the foundation is rotten. But it's also a reminder that you can rebuild." I opened the box. Inside I had placed a key.
"What's this?"
Clara asked. "It's the key to the Skyline estate," I said. "I'm selling it." Clara frowned. "But you designed it. It's your masterpiece." "It was a mausoleum," I said. "It was built for a life that didn't exist. It's too big, too cold, and too full of ghosts. I'm buying a brownstone in the city, near the park, something with history, something warmer. And it has a garden apartment on the ground floor, separate entrance. Perfect for a private investigator with a cat." Clara stared at the key. She looked at me, her eyes shimmering. "You want me to live with you?" "I want family," I said. "I'm 63, Clara. I have a lot of time left, I hope. But I don't want to spend it alone in a glass box. I want to spend it with family." She reached out and took the key. She closed her hand around it tightly. "Okay," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But I'm redecorating. Your brutalist phase is over." I laughed. "Deal." We clinked our glasses. The nightmare was over. Mark and Sarah were in the past, locked away in concrete boxes of their own making. Vanguard was safe, and I was finally truly an architect. I had designed a skyscraper that defied gravity. But sitting there with my daughter, watching the lights of Paris twinkle on, I realized I had finally succeeded in my most difficult project. I had rebuilt my life. And this time, the foundation was solid. Senility, and that is where our story ends. Ethan didn't just get revenge, he got a second chance. He learned that blood isn't always about who you marry, but who shows up when the walls are caving in. He lost a wife who saw him as a paycheck, and a son who saw him as an obstacle, but he gained a daughter who saw him as a man worth saving. The blue box started as a warning, but it ended as a gift. It was the demolition order for a fake life and the blueprint for a real one. Outro. So, what would you have done? If you were handed a blue box that contained the destruction of your entire life, would you have opened it? Or would you have left it on the table and lived in blissful ignorance? And do you think Sarah's sentence was fair, considering she lost everything? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and rebuilding, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We have so many more stories to tell. Until next time, keep your eyes open and remember, the truth is always worth the demolition costs.